My son said we're moving in with you. Because rent is too high. His wife added you'll cook and clean too. I agreed with a smile. The day they arrived, the locks were changed. A lawyer was waiting on the porch. Family story. I still hear those words as clearly as the day they were spoken. We were sitting in my living room in the little colonial I had shared with my husband for 31 years. The house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in Brookhaven, Pennsylvania, the kind of neighborhood where people still waved from their porches and the HOA sent gentle reminders about leaf bags in the fall. My son Kevin had driven up from the city with his wife Megan and their 5-year-old daughter Lily. They arrived late on a Sunday afternoon, the way they always did when they needed something. Kevin leaned forward on the couch, elbows on his knees, and told me the landlord was raising their rent again. We're moving in with you because rent is too high, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Megan sat beside him, scrolling on her phone for a second before looking up. You'll cook and clean too, she added. You're home all day anyway. It'll be easier for everyone. I looked at Lily coloring on the floor with the little box of crayons I kept in the coffee table drawer. I looked at the framed photo of my late husband Robert on the mantel. Then I looked at my son and his wife and I smiled. Of course, I said. Family helps family. When were you thinking of coming? Kevin said 2 weeks. Megan said they would start packing the next day. They stayed for another 40 minutes, long enough for me to make grilled cheese for Lily and long enough for Kevin to check the guest bedroom upstairs just to see the space. When they finally left, I stood in the doorway and watched their car pull away under the streetlights. Then I closed the door, locked it, and sat down at the kitchen table with my head in my hands. I had spent 3 years since Robert died learning how to live alone in this house. The property taxes still came. The HOA fee still came. The furnace still needed service every fall. My Social Security and the small pension Robert left covered the basics if I was careful. I had already started looking at one-bedroom condos near my sister in Florida because the stairs were getting harder and the quiet was starting to feel permanent. I had never once asked Kevin for help with any of it. He had not offered. After the funeral, he came by twice in the first month, and then the visits stretched to holidays and birthdays. Megan always had a reason. Work. Lily's schedule. Traffic. When they did come, they left dishes in the sink and took leftovers without asking. Once Kevin asked if I could spot them $2,000 for a car repair. I gave it. He never paid it back. I stopped bringing it up because I was tired of the silence that followed. That night after they left, I did not sleep. I sat in the recliner Robert used to claim and stared at the dark television. By morning, I had made a decision. I called Harold Brennan, the attorney who had handled Robert's estate and still sent me a Christmas card every year. We met at a diner 2 towns over so no one from the neighborhood would see us. I told him everything. The conversation. The smile I had forced. The years of small disappointments that had added up until I barely recognized my own son. Harold listened without interrupting. Then he said the law was simple. A verbal invitation could be revoked at any time. No one had a right to live in my house simply because they were family. He recommended I change the locks immediately, prepare a clear written notice that no one had permission to occupy the property, and keep a copy for the police if it became necessary. He also suggested I list the house for sale quietly if I was already thinking of downsizing. The market was decent. A clean break might be kinder than a long fight under the same roof. I drove home and called a locksmith the same afternoon. He came within the hour, replaced every exterior lock, and handed me 3 new sets of keys. I paid him in cash. That evening I packed 2 suitcases with clothes, medications, and the photo albums I cared about most. I left the rest of the house looking lived in. Dishes in the drying rack. A sweater over the back of a chair. The television remote on the arm of the sofa. I stayed 2 nights with my neighbor Carol, who asked no questions after I told her I needed a little space. The day they were scheduled to arrive, I returned to the house early. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with the new keys in my pocket and Harold's letter in a plain manila envelope. At 10:15 I heard the U-Haul pull into the driveway. I stayed upstairs in the bedroom that used to be Kevin's when he was a teenager. The window faced the front walk. I watched Kevin jump down from the truck cab, stretch, and walk toward the porch with the old house key in his hand. Megan followed with Lily holding her hand. Two of Kevin's friends from work climbed out of a second car and started unlatching the U-Haul ramp. Kevin tried the key. It did not turn. He tried again, harder. He rattled the knob. Then he rang the doorbell 3 times in a row. When no one answered, he called my cell phone. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Megan said something sharp that I could not hear through the glass. Lily started to cry. That was when Harold's dark sedan pulled up along the curb. He got out slowly, carrying a thin leather briefcase, and walked up the front path like a man who had done this before. Kevin turned. Megan turned. Harold introduced himself by name and profession and handed Kevin the envelope. I could not hear every word from the upstairs window, but I saw Kevin's face change. He tore the letter open. His mouth moved. Megan snatched the paper from his hands and read it herself. Harold stood with his hands folded in front of him and spoke in the calm tone he always used. The letter stated that any previous permission to reside in the home was formally withdrawn effective. Immediately. The property remained private. No one was authorized to enter, store belongings, or remain on the premises. The house was under contract for sale with closing scheduled in 30 days. Any attempt to force entry would be treated as trespassing and reported to the local police. Kevin's voice rose. He pointed at the house and then at Harold. Megan started talking over him, words like family and grandmother and you can't do this. Lily pressed her face into Megan's leg. One of the men from the U-Haul asked if they should start unloading anyway. Harold answered that they should not. He suggested they find temporary storage and make other living arrangements. He offered to wait while they made phone calls if they wished. Kevin tried the key one more time, then kicked the bottom of the door hard enough that the wreath I had hung for fall swung sideways. Harold did not move. He simply said that the police station was 6 minutes away and that he had already spoken with the officer on duty that morning as a courtesy. Kevin stood there breathing hard. Megan pulled Lily back toward the car. The two friends closed the U-Haul ramp without unloading a single box. They stayed in the driveway for almost 20 minutes. Kevin made 2 more calls. Megan sat in the passenger seat with the door open and her face in her hands. Eventually Kevin climbed back into the truck, slammed the door, and pulled away. The second car followed. Harold waited until both vehicles were out of sight before he looked up at the bedroom window and gave a small nod. I raised my hand once. Then I went downstairs, unlocked the front door with the new key, and let him inside. We sat at the kitchen table for a few minutes. He asked if I was all right. I said I was. He left a copy of the letter and his card and told me to call if they returned. After he drove away, I walked through every room of the house. The guest bedroom still had the same quilt on the bed. The refrigerator still held the milk and eggs I had bought for them. I poured the milk down the sink and threw the eggs away. Then I sat on the edge of the sofa and listened to the quiet. Kevin called that evening. I answered on the 3rd ring. He started with anger and moved into accusations and finally into a thin kind of pleading. I listened until he finished. Then I told him the house was no longer available and that I would be moving at the end of the month. I wished him luck finding a place. I said I hoped Lily was okay. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stayed in the house for the remaining weeks. The realtor brought 2 sets of buyers through. One couple made an offer that covered what I needed. I accepted. Carol helped me pack the rest of the dishes and the good towels. On the last morning, I stood in the empty living room and looked at the rectangle of lighter paint where Robert's favorite chair had sat for so many years. Then I locked the new locks one final time, put the keys in the lockbox, and drove south. I do not know where Kevin and Megan went that first night. I do not know what they told Lily. I only know that when the U-Haul pulled into my driveway, the locks had already been changed and a lawyer was waiting on the porch.